Good night, have one time tonight. God is good and God is good all the time. My name is Irma Jazz Spears. If I may give you a word on tonight, um, this gonna be a horrible news right here. Um, one of the daycare center workers burnt a 6 month old child. New Orleans daycare worker accused of deliberate burning infant hand and scalding the water. Uh, and with adult, we touch hot scalding water. It's hot to us. So imagine how a 6 month old baby felt, screaming, with the hot water on her hands. So New Orleans, a Central City daycare worker, was arrested Tuesday October this month. On a allegation that she deliberately burned an infant hand in scalding water of heated bottled water. So New Orleans police said, so the court record has showed Vicky Slaughter, she 27 years old. So she kind of young, working in a daycare center. She was booked with second degree cruelty, to a juvenile. Her bond was set Wednesday at 35,000. In New Orleans Parish. You know, um, so the child abuse, detected Mr. Smith, the 6 month old girl was dropped off. You know, um, was dropped off at the First Step Child Care at 2601 South Claiborne Avenue, by her father. So the father dropped the child off, so the child mother received a call from the school at 3:50 p.m. to inform her that her daughter left hand had been burned. Now imagine you receive a phone call about your 6 month old child. And see, when you drop your child off at school, you don't think of all this kind of stuff that's gonna happen. So the girl was taken, to Children's Hospital, New Orleans, for treatment of what the doctor determined was a second degree burn. So the burn injuries was so severe, the doctor said the child will have scars and possibility lose the range of motion in her hand. So based on the civilian footage, from the facility, um, she had control of the child, who was in her care, you know, when she sustained the child injuries, detective has said, so the subject is seen removing a bottle, from the bottle warmer, is then observing, learning, leaning over, and placing a 6 month victim left hand into the bottle warmer twice. Not once, but twice. Now that's horrible to hear. That's horrible to hear. So she deliberately wanted to burn this child. You know, she put the child hand in the warmer twice. So the victim was heard crying. On the video. They saw the video. So oh Lord have mercy. I don't know what's wrong with people to harm little babies. Not only babies, children. You know, how can they just put a 6 month old baby hand into a hot warmer? That you deliver it warm, so hot, and then stuck that baby hand in there. So I'm sorry this happened to the 6 month old child. I even had started reading when I just saw the title, and I just broke down. So the incident had been seen on video. Now she should not be getting out on parole. Should not be getting out on parole. Everything was seen on video. So from hurting a 6 month old child, she should not be getting out on parole. So we have to be careful, hiring anyone over our kids in daycare center, because the parents have to work, have to work. And when they drop the kids off at the daycare center, or at school, they're thinking their child is safe. They're thinking they're going to pick their child back up, not knowing, if you're going to receive a phone call and talking about just meet us at the hospital. So we have to be careful and hire. This is hiring anyone that work at these daycare centers. Um, we're going to make sure there's cameras all over that place. Because you got to be careful with these kids. They have to be protected. So we got to have cameras all over the place. Wherever these kids be at, in the sleeping room, the playing room, wherever these kids be at, they need to have cameras all over their daycare center. Okay, so 2, we're going to have to enforce a background check before you hire anyone at the daycare center. Under that background check, 1, you should ask that question: do you love kids? They might lie and say yes, but that's 1 out of 3. So 2, we're gonna check for criminal background check, a criminal record check to see if they have any in the charges. If they have criminal background, being in jail for this and that, they don't need to be around those kids. This is things we have to start doing now, because just seeing that little 6-month baby hand, that is tragic. So ask them if they love kids, check for a criminal background check, and 3, mental health. You have to have mental health to put a 6-month baby hand in a hot warmer. So we need to check all these things before we hire anyone in these daycare centers. Now, what that was last month, we had the owner, of the daycare center, kill a child, give him some kind of pills. So it go from the owner all the way down with the owners. They got to get licensed, to have these daycare center. We still need to do a background check on them. Because look at the owner last month. Killed the child in the daycare center. So these are things we have to check for before hiring. And also with owners, they have to get licensed, to have a daycare center open. And we need to do a background check on them too. Because look what happened to the owners last time what I put out. They killed the child in their center. They was the owner. We just have to be careful. I'm not talking about the parents. I'm talking about the owners of these daycare centers. You have to be careful of who you hire under these kids, over these kids. So that's a terrible news for the daycare center. I have a little short word. We still in Paul. This could be a disagreement with between Paul and Baltimore. Now this is second journey now. Acts 15 chapter 36, verse 41. Now sometime later, Paul has said to Baltimore, let us go back and visit the believers in all the time where we preach the word of the Lord and see how they are doing. Now the first journey, they preached that word, got the churches all stable and accomplished and everything. So now, Paul said, let's go back. Let's go back and check on our church. He established a whole lot of churches, on their journey. So let's go and check on our churches and stuff. So more work could now be planned. Paul's original proposal to Baltimore was merely to revisit, the churches they had already had planted, but God had other plans. Now he wanted the work to expand into Macedonia and Greece. So Barcelona had wanted to take John with them. Now remember, John is Barcelona's cousin. Now on their first journey, he had John with them. But then John, all of a sudden, he just left. And didn't tell nobody nothing. Just up and left. So now he wants to travel again on the second journey. So Paul had proposed a second missionary trip with Baltimore to revisit the churches they had planted in central modern day. You know, um, in the first trip, they had started with Baltimore's young cousin John, you know, known as Mo. However, he left them, near the beginning of the trip. But Paul did not think it was wise to take him because he had deserted them, and had not continued with them in the work. Now, see, they was on the trip for years, so John left like in the beginning of their trip, so that's kind of deserted them, and they had to do the rest of the journey by themselves. And now he wants to come back with them again, so here we have uh, a private fight, between two ministers, no less than Paul and Baltimore, but yet made to end well. Baltimore wished his nephew John, to go with them, but Paul did not think him worthy of the honor or fit for the service who had departed from them without their knowledge. Like he just up and left. He didn't tell them that. He just up and left. And it said they was way at the beginning of the trip. And they be on the trip for years. I think it was like 3 years. And John just up and left. So but that's cousin, but they said blood thicker than water. So he wanted his cousin to come here, but Paul disagreed. So they had such a sharp disagreement, that they parted companies. Baltimore had took Mo, John Mo, and sell for Cyprus. So no matter if he had a disagreement, no matter how Paul felt, he was taking his cousin. So Paul and Baltimore had disagreed sharply over Mo. Paul didn't want to take him along because he had left them early on their first journey. Now this a disagreement that had caused the two great preachers, to form two terms opening up to two ministry. So now, since they have a disagreement, now they're going two separate ways. They open two ministry because Paul refused to have John with them on a second journey. Now he want to go on a second journey. He going with Baltimore, and they splitting up their ministry. He going this way. He going that way. So that go to show you this is a lesson that preachers do have disagreement. Christians do have disagreement. So disagreement caused two great preachers, to form two terms, opening up two ministry, to form two ministry that God worked even through conflict and disagreement. So now we see that Christians and preachers have disagreement. So they have disagreement in church. Preachers, we think they don't because they're always preaching us that word, and a lot of time, they have disagreement too. They're human just like anybody else. But Paul chose silence, and left the comment by the two believers to the grace of the Lord. So Paul's second missionary journey. Now this was Silas, as his co-worker began 3 years. That's what I'm saying. They be on their journey for years. I know the last one was 3 years, and this one here gonna be 3 years also. 3 years after the first, 3 years after the first journey had ended. So this 3 years later, they on their second journey. So Silas had been involved in Jerusalem, Constantine had been one of the two men that chosen to represent Jerusalem in church. So Silas really gonna be representing Jerusalem church. He from there, so he gonna be representing them. So Paul is from Anas, church, and he chose Silas, and Baltimore chose John, and so they go on their separate ways. So they travel together to many cities to spread the good news. Now this is the teamwork. Demonstrating the church unity after the decision at Jerusalem church. Now they didn't stop. Excuse me. They didn't stop them from going out and preaching that word. You see what I'm saying? So when you have disagreement, that word is very important. The good news, that's very important. You got this some kind of way. You see how the conflicts and disagreement, they made it some kind of way. They made it work. He went this way and that way, but the word still got out. They did not stop the journey. They kept the journey going, and that's how it is. When you in church. Are you a Christian? You got a ministry. You got a disagreement. Don't let it stop you. You got to keep it moving. Keep that ministry moving. If you got to go separate ways, keep the ministry moving. Don't stop because of disagreement and conflict. Keep it moving. So Mark is significant ship and Paul ministry. Ever since Baltimore has sought him out to help build the church in Saharan, the two have seen inseparable. They established a church that will influence Christians for centuries. The now Paul and Baltimore had went their separate ways. Paul would take Silas on his next ministry journey, while Baltimore would take John. He always gonna take John because that's his cousin. So Paul didn't want John to join them on the second trip because John just got up and left. But John is Baltimore's cousin, and he refused to have his cousin travel alone. So even a disagreement, the ministry must still go on, and it did. This Paul and Baltimore's second journey. I told you this was a short one, and we're gonna be doing Paul for a while. This is a lesson that churches do have disagreement. Preachers do have disagreement, but in conflict, but you can't stay in that feeling. You still have to work it out some kind of way. They work it out some kind of way, even though they had to go separate ways. The ministry still went on. The trip still went on. They didn't decide, okay, I'm going home, or here I'm going home. No, the ministry still went on. You got to break it out some kind of way. Even if you got to go separate ways, you got to work it out. Now we see preachers have conflicts too. Christians have conflicts too. Even though they could not work together, but they still worked it in the ministry, even they had to go separate ways. You know, and so we also talk about the daycare worker had took a 6-month old child and put it in a hot warmer, hot as it can be, and not only once, but twice. And this child got all kind of burns. The doctor said that the child might have burns for life. The child might be traumatized. The mother gonna have to get the child all kind of help. If the child gonna be traumatized, I don't understand what's wrong with adults these days. You have parents that killed their child and put it in a trash can. You had owners killed the child in a daycare center with pills. I don't know how they could do it to a little baby. A baby is precious and a baby is innocent. So thank God the child did not die. It's in the hospital getting the proper care. that the child needed. And we talk about Paul and Barnabas. They had a disagreement, a conflict. They didn't say we're gonna go home. They work it out some kind of way, even though they could not work together. But the ministry still went on separate ways. So we see that preachers do have disagreement. Christians do have disagreement. So they have all that in the church. But some kind of way you got to work it out and try to get along some kind of way in the church. So that's all the word and news that I have for you today. Y'all have a blessed and safe day, and I see y'all in the next video.